Welcome to Electric Evolution with Liz Allan. This podcast is about the journey to a more sustainable future in order for us to be able to do our bit to achieve net zero. I'll be discussing a variety of topics with experts in their field in order to educate and increase our knowledge of clean energy, electric vehicles and the electric vehicle infrastructure. So whether you're an individual wanting to make a difference at home, a small business or a corporate, this podcast is just for you. So on today's podcast, I have got Ben Kilbey, who is the founder and CEO of Bold Voodoo. I love that name. Thank you, Ben. It's been ages trying to get you on this, hasn't it? But thank you for joining.
Liz.
Thank you ever so much for joining me. It's really great to have you on here.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. It's an honour.
Oh, stop it. Stop it. No, I was actually chuffed that you said your wife listens to this, which is fabulous. So, hello. What's your wife called?
And Natalie.
Hello, Natalie. Thank you for listening. That's fabulous, especially if you're out running and stuff. But let's start off by getting a little bit of your background and what you did before you started Bold Voodoo, if you would.
How far back do you want me to go? Should we go back just a couple of, so I was journalist, various newspapers, newswires, then spent a big chunk of my career at Standard & Poor's. During that time, I moved around the metals desk, covering precious, covering base metals, and then that kind of, the energy transition started really taking off, and I started looking at that, and then I got approached. In fact, I didn't get approached. I was using LinkedIn during COVID, and I never really used to like LinkedIn, and now it's like my favorite platform, especially for business development. But that's another conversation. And I was I was on the energy transition desk at S&P, and I was writing a newsletter, and I was looking at gigafactories, and I was looking at Northvolt, and then Britishvolt popped up with this horrendous Union Jack flapping behind this horrendous font, and I was like, what is this? So I reached out, did some due diligence, tried to get hold of Allan, the CEO and founder, and went through his PR firms and was like, they're not very good. So I went to him directly. And then got in touch with him, did an interview, then interviewed him again. We got talking about a partner of mine, or a friend of mine that can make dry rooms. And I said, maybe you should get in touch. And then we carried on the conversation. And then he said to me, in 6 to 9 months, I'm going to need a comms guy. Would you consider it? And I was like, well, 6 to 9 months in my head is a long time away. So I was like, yeah, cool. And then we were living through COVID, and then true to form, 6 to 9 months later, he got in touch and said, would you like a job? And then the rest is history. For Britishvolt anyway, so I had 2 years there, taking it from an unknown to a unicorn, and also poster child to ugly duckling. It was quite a roller coaster. During that time, I was looking after Britishvolt, but like I said, it was not really a known entity until the business started to grow a bit and the communication started to kick in. And you asked me just as we were coming into the call about my slogan, we're all comms. We never had an internal communicator at Britishvolt, and I always said, look, that's not really what I want to do, but it's an essential pillar, just like your media, your government, your investor relations, your internal relations are really key. So the Trend is Your Friend, which is my newsletter, was born kind of as a hybrid between keeping the journalists on the journey with me and then keeping the staff internally at Britishvolt on the journey with us. And We're All Comms came about because I wanted to bring everyone in and make sure that everyone felt like they were part of the journey. And also, in most companies, you won't even realize it, but you'll have someone that has like a little side hobby of graphic design or social media, and you can pull all these different levers and actually bring everyone into a really inclusive, happy working environment. So all of that is kind of a bit of a nutshell to a few diversions to how I got to originally Bold Voodoo. So unfortunately, Britishvolt went into liquidation in early 23, which was a bit of a surprise to most of us, including myself, who was, I was at one point chief communications officer, but then moved to director of communications. And that's when I kind of wasn't as involved in the day-to-day, didn't really know as much of what was going on as I had done when I joined. And yeah, I kind of saw that the way that I grew Britishvolt was by uniting the UK's battery industry, and then working with our partners. So we did some work with Circular, who's now actually a partner of Bold Voodoo. And so I started to create these connections where I thought, this is a startup. It is doing really well. This is at the point that it was doing really well. But who knows what can happen to a startup, especially when it was growing at such magnificent speed and hiring so many people. So I kind of started running the Britishvolt desk. I was given a lot of autonomy, a lot of freedom, and I had a lot of success. We brought in Glencore for a good comms narrative, or at least it helped it, and the different connections that we all brought together. But I kind of saw that if it all went wrong, maybe I could on my own. And then when it went into liquidation in January 23, I thought, you know what, I'm going to give it a go. And I remember one of my first conversations was I called myself Strategic Communications. And I was approached by someone who had a Strategic Communications, and he said, why do you call it strategic? He said, you're much more tactical. And he goes, I see you're much more connected, and maybe, there's not many tactical communications people out there. And he also said to me, why do you want to do this? And I said, if I'm honest, to just see if I can do it. And kind of it's grown beyond my wildest dreams. It's doing really well because I'm fortunate enough to work with such amazing partners such as Octopus Energy, Volta Energy Technologies, GDI, and they're all good people. I surround myself with good people, I create a network of good people. And yeah, it's a wonderful business to be part of.
I was going to say that just working with those size companies now, because you're still a small business, aren't you? You're like me,
Yes.
That's amazing. Really, to actually be able to say, these are who I've actually been working with, because there's probably lots of bigger companies who maybe do similar to you that would probably go, oh my God, I'd really love a company like that on board, but they're not gonna, you've done it, haven't you? You've got them on board, which is fantastic.
Yeah, it's good. It's good. It's good fun. Yeah, I try to offer something that's a little bit, like you said, we're all comms, and there are a lot of PR communications businesses out there. So it's how do you differentiate yourself? And it's kind of like just doing things in the right way. And there are a lot of good companies out there doing things in the right way. But it's, leveraging your own network, knowing your own strengths, and knowing how to amplify the strengths of the people around you. So yeah, I'm very fortunate. What I've tried to do is you've got your core clients, partners, I don't really like to call them clients, are part of the collaborative. So like I said, there's Octopus, Volta, GDI, Circular, SC Insights, and a friend of mine's company, Asphalt Group, which is a bit of a newer one for me, but it's about improving road surfaces through low carbon solutions, and we'll get to that later maybe. But it's about, there's no conflicts of interest within the client base. They've got potential similar investors looking at similar businesses there might be cross-pollination, and generally the journalists are also are interested in each one of those businesses. So I'm not just going to a journalist when I need to give them a story. It's about cultivating those relationships to really help educate and inform the journalists and bring everyone on the journey with us.
I think that's that kind of the way that you're working obviously builds that level of trust up as well, doesn't it? And actually people buy from people that they know and that they trust, and it's about, like you say, it's kind of that, but I suppose it's about like that kind of collaborative movement that you're pulling together, and they all trust you. You're probably the conduit in the middle, are you?
Yeah, no, I think it is a business built on trust. I like to think that I'm very trustworthy. People pay me for my services, but it's not like this is where you are, that given. They know that things are delivered and actioned and done, and the value is added. It doesn't have to be on we pay for 1 day a month. We want to see that. There's a lot of trust within the business, within the introductions, and within the people that are part of the collaborative. So I think there's also a bit of that. I've done the due diligence. So people that I work with, and I say this, if I ever have to work with people that I don't particularly want to work with, then I'm doing something wrong. And I might as well I don't mean just go and get a job, but I may as well go back into a machine that's not my own. Whereas in this instance, I can cherry pick who I work with, which is a real blessing, and then put the right people together. And someone once said to me, you don't know your superpowers until they're explained to you. Some people are like, oh, can you sit down and explain to us how you made all this happen? And sometimes like, well, I don't know if I can. I mean, I could, but we're like, okay, and then we sit down. But someone said to me, you've got a natural skill of putting the right people in the right room and mix and matching, matchmaking.
Yeah.
I guess it's a bit of a matchmaking. Bringing the right people together, and it can sometimes be just a random conversation with someone. I'll be like, oh, actually, I know someone in my network. You should meet them. And I'm not just always doing that for financial gain. I guess there's that part as well. Not everything is a cost. There's not additional cost. We work together, we win together. And I like to work with people that also add value to me.
Yes.
So it's not just about me I don't just want to be a service provider. I want it to be two-way traffic. And so far,
I really like this because I like the fact, especially what you said about not going back into a job in inverted commas where you are putting. I know this sounds awful, and people who are watching and listening might disagree with me, but sometimes you go anywhere, you're in a job, and you have to put up with people whether you like them or not, don't you? I was having a conversation with somebody last week, and we were talking about the levels of putting up that he's had to go through with, and actually I kind of, yeah, my heart goes out to people when you've got to do that. But being self-employed is not, it's not an easy thing. You've made it work. You've done it really, really well, haven't you? So actually, how long have you been out? So it was what, March 23?
January 23. So we're
But
coming
that's
up
pretty
to.
amazing if you've got these on board, these companies on board. It's fantastic.
Yeah, there's a good few companies in the hopper. There's a good few conversations going on. Actually, someone said to me, they said, sometimes when businesses like yours, communications businesses grow, what tends to happen is the founder will then bring in juniors, and the juniors will then become the point of contact, and the juniors may not have the level of understanding connections in the business. And it kind of was going back to that person said to me, why are you doing this? Right at the beginning, it was to see if I could do it. So now I know I can do it. Because there's a lot of fear and trepidation and, oh my God, what happens if it goes wrong?
Yeah,
and it really causes you sleepless nights, and you feel like, well, if it goes wrong, it's a reflection of me.
Yes.
And it does become a person. I remember right at the beginning trying to win work, and it, when you get rejected, those first couple of rejections, you're kind of like heartbroken, and you kind of you have to. I forgot where I was going with that. I've gone off on a tangent, and I've totally forgotten where the conversation was going. And this is exactly what I advise people not to do that work with me. Stick to the point. Don't go off on tangents. Do as I say.
Don't worry. It'll come back to you. I'm going to ask you about stop burning stuff because you've not mentioned that yet, and I think that's something we need to kind of delve into because you got involved with the stop burning stuff right from the start, didn't you? Can you just, for those people that don't know about it, there's going to be quite a lot who will know about it, but for those that don't, can you just give a little bit of an explanation about what it is and who's involved?
Yes, if we go back a little bit to Quentin Willson, and Quentin and I met when I was at Britishvolt. It was a chance encounter on LinkedIn, and a friendship was born pretty quickly. Quentin's son Max came into Britishvolt and made some amazing videos to tell the story and bring it to life, and that was incredibly helpful. And then, as you know now, or as we all know, Britishvolt went into liquidation. I started Bold Voodoo. Quentin has a campaign group, Fair Charge. Around April 23, he brought me into Fair Charge to assist with communications, help him with that. And we'd been getting to know Dan Caesar, Robert Llewellyn, who are the fully charged maestros, and the rest of the team during the Britishvolt days. And it was right back then when I was like, Quentin, there's something here between these relationships are good. We should really try and see what we can do together to win together, to get that EV narrative out there. And then slowly but surely the relationship, it's a relationship really built on trust between Quentin Willson, Robert Llewellyn and Dan Caesar. and myself, and others that are involved, but the key kind of figureheads. Just realised there's not many women involved there. We need some more women at the top there. Yeah, but we'll get there with that. So the conversation was had. There was a lot of misinformation last year, especially now we've had the change of government leading into all of that general election. There was a hell of a lot of misinformation and information. And so Stop Burning Stuff was born out of the belief that someone needed to push back on the misinformation. And I truly believe that it has had a huge positive impact on not only the energy transition, but not only the EV transition, but the energy transition, by countering misinformation to the point that, as we spoke about before joining, one of the more less friendly newspapers towards EVs actually would like to meet later in the month to have a lunch with Quentin and I, because the editorial stance has moved from outwardly hostile to grumpy acceptance. Now that is a huge win.
Love that.
Yeah, but this is what's happening as you educate, and you don't. I'm not very good with conflict, but I am good at building relationships, and I feel like that's the approach that Stop Burning Stuff has. It will say, "Hold on, that's not right," and it will go in and it will challenge when it believes something is factually incorrect. And it will go in and correct that. But then in the back end, you're building relationships and you're helping. You're not going in there for a fight. You're going in there to build relationships and make sure that the truth is told. So the whole purpose of Stop Burning Stuff is to stop misinformation, but also to enable a successful energy transition that eventually stops burning stuff.
Exactly. And it's brilliant. So literally what you're doing is countering that negative rhetoric, aren't you? And I've talked about this through this podcast, since it all started, really kind of this horrible kind of nasty negativity last year, and actually the way that you as your campaign, the campaign Stop Burning Stuff is actually making a difference is by kind of going back to those journalists to say what you've just said. Here are the facts, but how easy has it been to get them to rescind? I don't know how it works. Can they rescind what goes out, or just edit it? Or I suppose if it's online, you can edit something. But how does it work when you kind of go, God, that's a right load of tut?
Yeah,
change this.
I think it goes back to Asphalt Group and it being a bit of an outlier in terms of structure of the Bold Voodoo collaborative, but this is a very good example. So the Daily Mail called out some research, I think, that was saying basically EVs cause potholes. And through Stop Burning Stuff and some of its partners, including I think it was ECIU and Transport and Environment, and they got a retraction. And actually, the first piece of work that I did with Stephen Cook, the managing director of Asphalt Group, was to say, you're a voice in the industry. These potholes are not caused by EVs. And we came out and we did a story, and actually the Daily Mail and Daily Express ran it very positively. But all of that was a culmination of Stop Burning Stuff and partners calling out an article in the Daily Mail, it getting corrected, and then leading to actually a complete reversal by everyone working together. Now, when you call someone out, we're not saying, it's not like pointing fingers. It's just saying that we don't agree. Factually, that is incorrect. Sometimes it doesn't work overnight, and sometimes some journalists do get more of the opinion pieces. So sometimes they're not even journalists, but it's more of the opinion pieces where you can get people, because they're opinionated, don't particularly like to be called out. But most of the journalists across all of the newspapers, from friendly to faux, and then there's no faux, but the friendly to less friendly, generally, if you are polite and just say, look, there might be a little bit of and then when you actually, don't forget, most journalists at the end of the day chose that career path because they want to tell a story. Now, yeah, all right, there is that saying, don't let facts get in the way of a good story. And sometimes, there's a great book, Tickle the Public, and it goes back to historically, tabloid newspapers have sometimes made stories more colourful than they are to sell newspapers, because they are more fun or more, they have a different approach. But 9 times out of 10, even the journalists working at those tabloids, they still would rather have the facts and be armed with the facts to use them later on. So it might not always be an automatic correction, but it might be that gradually you start to meet, greet, lunch, introduce to other people, build relationships, educate, and then you become part of that. So it's okay to be wrong. You only learn from mistakes, right? And stories evolve over time. EVs, energy transition, it's all new technology. It's all new. Some people may be massive disbelievers, and that clouds their judgment around sometimes what they're reporting. I don't know. But 9 times out of 10, I would say last year, don't get me wrong, it was 24/7 last year.
Yeah.
But it's had a positive impact. It has had an impact. You can still call out misinformation or factually incorrect stories, but I don't think they're as bad as they were.
Good. Do you think it's calm? Because I always think that the reason it's possibly calmed, and I might be totally wrong about this, is since the transition to a new government. Is it because? Do you feel it's kind of waiting for another peak, or do you feel kind of people are starting to look in a different place for their news, or as in the journalists?
I was thinking about misinformation, disinformation, and what we did with EVs, and then what we're seeing now, and how misinformation and disinformation. There's a great song by Faithless, and it's like disinformation is a weapon of mass destruction. It's been around forever, yes. Right? And we're seeing it again. We're seeing some people not very happy with the new Labour government. So all that discontent that was created previous to the Labour government, it all boils over now. Labour's in power because of misinformation on social media. It shows you how powerful social media is, and how actually, certain people at the moment, high-profile people, should really realise their responsibility. It's hugely influential, as we've seen. So just go back to your question, and then, because again I've gone off on a bit of a tangent, and let me answer the question.
So I was saying, do you think that because of the new government, that's had an impact on the way that
this is yes. Well, they're much more friendly towards EVs, right? Yeah. In rhetoric, they are much more. Let's see what the action is, but they're actually much more friendly towards the Labour Party. Is much more friendly towards renewable energy. So the point I was talking about there is, has it got easier? It's just, that's where I was going. So it's just transitioned to a new form of mis and disinformation. So yeah, I guess for EVs it might be, but then suddenly we've got an uprising in populism. And now obviously social media is really in focus with everything that's been happening on X. But I'd say if we hadn't just gone through a huge civil unrest in the UK, then yes, we are definitely seeing, I would like to think, a more level, rational playing field for EVs. Or it might just be at the moment that they're just off the news agenda because of everything else that's going on.
So if we look at engaging with the new policymakers, I know that obviously kind of Quentin kind of gets involved in a variety of kind of policy stuff, doesn't he? Or just kind of putting himself, he's a voice for kind of for EVs, and other areas, but actually, how do you engage now? How are things moving with regards to engagement with the new policymakers, especially around transitioning to kind of electric vehicles and heat and everything like that? Is it different now? I mean, it's got to be, hasn't it?
I think from a renewable energy point of view, if you just look at how much airtime people like Octopus are getting now, not that they weren't before, they're a household name, right? But I think in terms of the interaction you see with Greg and government, I'm not speaking as someone that's inside the tent around Octopus's government interactions, but if you just look at it from what we're seeing in the media, it does seem like they're bridging that gap between business and government, and that was their whole campaign, being the party of business. And I think that they seem to get the fact that if you wean yourself off of fossil fuels, you can create energy independence, which leads to energy security, which leads to a better standard of living for all of us. So I think the engagement with key policy people within government is good. I think from an EV perspective, we would like to see more open discussion. But it's such early days, and it goes back to what I just said. There was a huge kind of party that we had this moment in time of like when we needed it change, and then suddenly we went from a moment of jubilation to civil unrest, and it was like there was no time for actually to sit. It's been such a wild ride for the last month. It's only been a month, right? Has it been a month? It's been about a month.
Yeah, it's not far off that.
I think we will see once we get back out, through the summer holidays. It's a quiet period anyway, normally. Back into September and get around to those everyone being back from holidays and whatever else you get up to in the summer holidays, trying to survive this heat, etc. And I think there will be very positive conversations to be had with government around EVs, energy transition in general. But it's looking for me even if I wasn't on the inside, if I was looking from the outside, regardless of everything else that's going on, there is a lot of positive noise around renewables and making us a energy independent nation.
Which would be, it's what we need to be aiming towards anyway, isn't it?
Yes.
So much.
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I would love to. Sorry, go on. Go. No, go.
No, go.
No, I was going to talk about putting solar on my roof and that. It's another, and that's what you say. It's another level of expense. But I'd like to get to a point where I can just have, because we're south-facing, so we've got, hopefully Bold Voodoo keeps growing, and then that can be one of my rewards. Put some solar panels on the roof with a nice battery on the side of the house or wherever I position my battery. Because as we all know, batteries are helping to save the world.
Go on, tell me about that. Go on.
Well, that's one of many. One of my many cheesy. One of my many slogans. But that came about because when we went to Britishvolt, it came about from my children, 3 daughters, and the human swan, Sasha Dench, who is in the process of launching a new campaign called Flight of the Vultures, to bring to life the fact that in India, and we go off on a bit of a tangent here, but in India there's been a huge, it just shows how we're all interconnected. So in India there was, vultures used to, something died, they'd come along, strip the bones, like cattle died within seconds. They kept the rats under control, the wild dogs, and then the cows were fed with a growth hormone, I think. But when the vultures ate it, it wiped them out, basically. And now India's having a lot of issues with rats, wild dogs, leading to more bites, leading to rabies. Anyway, before all this, Sasha Dench used to use a paraglider to fly around telling stories of sustainability from all over the country. She was a brand ambassador for Britishvolt, and it just came about one day talking to the kids. And I was just like, what can batteries do, kids? And help save the world. And then I got to talking to my VC friend, James Frith, who managed to get it into a conversation during a panel discussion at UK BIC, and it's kind of carried on from there. And recently I was having a conversation with Modo Energy, and Ed Porter there was like, originally it was batteries can help save the world. And he was like, actually, Ben, batteries are helping to save the world. So it's now evolved in the recent weeks to batteries are helping to save the world. So there you go. And they will. They will be a fundamental enabler to a successful energy transition, because without batteries, you can't store that lovely, beautiful, clean, renewable energy.
Exactly. And actually, when we start looking at vehicle to everything, EVs and their batteries are going to help save the world, aren't they, anyway? So I wanted to just ask you about Trend is Your Friend, and kind of, so that's your newsletter, isn't it? Just tell me a little bit about why you started it and where you kind of, because you put quite a lot of information into it, don't you?
Yeah, maybe sometimes too much. It's a definite insight into the inner workings of my mind. But no, so the Trends of Your Friend, going back to Britishvolt, was born. So I used to write a lot of newsletters for S&P, and one of them was on the energy transition. And when I moved to Britishvolt, and I said I had a few complications with their original PR firms, trying to get hold of a row. And it made like, when I was a journalist, I didn't particularly, there was only a handful of PR people that I really found useful and helpful and didn't just want to sell me something on the date they needed to sell me. They actually built relationships. And so when I got the job, what I wanted to do was I wanted to be the comms person that I would have wanted when I was a journalist. So I created the Trends of Your Friend. So I used to write newsletters that went to bankers and to traders. And I thought, well, actually, in this instance, the bankers and the traders are the journalists. They're the ones that need the information.
Yeah.
So the Trends of Your Friend was born, and then it was also used as internal communications for Britishvolt. And then when Britishvolt went into liquidation, insolvency, I realised that I had a database of really key journalists, and then I just used it as a peg. So if you're a partner of Britishvolt, if you're a partner of Bold Voodoo, which you also, if you abbreviate Britishvolt and Bold Voodoo, you get to BV. So that kind of is a bit of a legacy there. That's kind of part of the package. But it's not. I don't want it just to be a newsletter that incorporates the people that are direct collaborators and partners. It actually just encompasses everything that I learn in 2 weeks. It's fortnightly. It used to be weekly, and I was like, it's too much because it's quite a lot of work to put a newsletter like that together.
Imagine. Yeah.
And then
Just me doing my newsletter does, that I find, oh my God. And that's the perfectionism as well. That takes twice as long.
Yeah, indeed, and it all has to come together. So it probably takes a week to do it because I start dropping, take some information in the first week, and then try and consolidate it all in the second week, and then bring in the right images. And so the Trends of Your Friend really is, I would say, probably the anchor of the business. It's been what's really helped it grow, and it helps other people's businesses grow as well because it's read by industry, government, and journalists at a very high level. So it's been successful and it's fun. I really enjoyed doing it. And if only 10 people, because I can see who reads it. Sometimes I see the people reading, like, wow, that person I wouldn't have, really people that mean a lot to me personally, who are very senior in their positions. I'm like, well, actually, if only they read it, it's worth it to me. Luckily, they're not the only people that do read it, but if they were, it's more about quality of the readership than the quantity of the readership. So I'm not going for like the most well-read newsletter. If that happens, brilliant, but that's not really what it's about. It's about who's reading it.
Yeah. Do you know? I know you've got to go, so I would talk to you for ages, but I know you've got to dash. Just wanted to kind of end by saying, where do you see Bold Voodoo? Oh my goodness. Where do you see Bold Voodoo in the next 2 or 3 years then? Where would you like it to be?
No, I'd like it to be known as one of the most effective communications partners that you can have. I don't necessarily need it to have 50 clients. If it goes that way, brilliant. But having the core clients I've got now, I'm working with them for success. I'd like the partnership to grow. I'd like to enable. So I've got certain partners who also run communications agencies, businesses, and we leverage one another's skill sets. We pass on business to one another. But for Bold Voodoo, under that brand, that's not to say other brands won't emerge that potentially have a bigger client base. But for Bold Voodoo, having a very select, cherry-picked group of partners that enable positive change, that's where I want to be. And it goes back to what I said to you earlier on about someone gave me the advice, like, as your business grows, don't just bring in juniors. Actually, I would love to train juniors. I used to love doing that at Standard & Poor's. We had a post-grad program, and I'd come in and I'd train, and what I'd realise is some of the juniors, some of the kids coming in, they weren't kids, postgrads, they didn't really want to work at S&P. they want to go and work at a trading house or a bank where I had connections. So I spoke to someone very senior in HR and I said, look, I know this program is about training these kids to be the best. Kids, I'm getting old, aren't I? Young people to be the best that they can be. I said, but actually for business development for us, if I train them to be the best they can be, teach them how to network, and then find them a job in a bank or a trading house, they'll always be the point of contact that I need for our business to grow in the bank. So I love that. So it's not that I don't want to work with juniors. It's just for my core business, Bold Voodoo, I think I want that to be where if you work with Bold Voodoo, it's direct connection to me. But I'd also love to give lots more people opportunity for growth and to come into the industry, because I think communications, we're all comms, is without doubt aligned with any business plan. You know, make sure if you're building a business, your business plan and your comms plan are aligned. It's as important to your business as your business plan. Your people are your power. You know, make sure that is the core thing you get as an internal communicator. I'd like to make a difference. I'd like to make sure there's a successful energy transition, and I'd like to enable a clean air, sustainable future for our 3 daughters.
Love it. Oh my God, I love it. Like I say, I could talk to you for double the time that we've got today, but I know you've got to go. How do people contact you? Would you like them, if they want to talk to you about this, are you happy for people to contact you on LinkedIn or through your website? And
LinkedIn is great. You know, it's Ben at boldvoodoo.com. I need to potentially update my emails. It's still BALD Ben. But no, LinkedIn, if you want to find me, Ben Kilbey. There's also a Bold Voodoo. It's a bit confusing, right? LinkedIn page. But yeah, just find me on LinkedIn. Happy to talk. And like I said, growth is what it will be. And it will always be about working with the right partners. So if you feel like Bold Voodoo has something to offer you and vice versa, then yeah, please do reach out. And not only that, please keep an eye on Stop Burning Stuff, because there are some very exciting developments on the horizon, some big news to come. So watch this space.
Excellent. We didn't even go into fair charge very much either, did we?
What we'll do is, because I'm sure when I get a diagnostic of my performance, Quentin will say you went off on a few tangents. So note to self. No, don't go off on so many tangents. There was just a lot to talk about in such a small amount of time. But let's get Quentin involved to talk about fair charge. Let's get him on the show.
I'd love that. So
brilliant, Liz.
Thank you, Ben. It's been amazing. I've really, really enjoyed talking to you. I'm going to say thank you to everybody else. Thank you for joining us. Thank you for listening and watching. And I will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Liz. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye. Thanks for watching this episode of Electric Evolution. If you enjoyed it, please don't forget to hit the like and subscribe buttons to stay connected with us. And if you're inspired by our journey towards a sustainable future and want to support our mission on a monthly basis, please check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/Electric Evolution Podcast. Your support really helps us to bring the latest insights and discussions in the world of clean energy, electric vehicles, electric vehicle charging and sustainability to you. If a regular subscription isn't what you're looking for, you can always consider buying us a coffee. Just head over to www.buymeacoffee.com/Electric Evolution Podcast. Every cup helps us to keep the electric evolution moving forwards. And if you're curious about our work in the EV infrastructure sector at Full Circle Continuous Improvement, why not visit us at www.fullcircleci.co.uk to find out more. And if you want to send me a message, you can always email me on liz@fullcircleci.co.uk. And finally, please don't forget to share this podcast if it sparked your interest. And let's keep spreading the word about all of these topics that we're covering. So, until next time, see you soon. Bye!